Just before we move on to Weber and Schutz, I'd like to briefly mention Husserl's work on perception. Much of this was, of course, to be taken up by Merleau-Ponty in the phenomenology of perception. But Husserl argues that when we see an object in spatio-temporal terms, we see it spatially, we see it physically, we can locate it in time. We perceive that object from one perspective at a time. A painting, by and large, is always two-dimensional. It's difficult in the painting to see it in 3D. Of course, we've got 3D films, 3D videos, but what we see in a picture or in a flat on a television program usually is one particular horizon. Our experience of an object is always limited in some way. Now, the object is unitary. We know that it has hidden sides. We know that the moon has a hidden side and aspects. We do not see the object from all sides at once. But how do we perceive that object? For Husserl, memories, expectations, idealizations point back to perception. What we cannot actually see is in some sense present to us. They are co-present. They're connected through the references, the reference points that we can actually see. Let me illustrate this, admittedly not perfectly, through literature. The 19th century realist novel, whether in England or elsewhere in Europe, tended to have the author knowing all that there was to know about the character. There were no surprises. Henry James complained that George Eliot limited the perspective because she knew everything there was to know about her characters. I'm not sure that's true. And I think characters such as Dorothea Brooke, Gwendolen Harley have the capacity to surprise us. But that particular form of a novel, all forms of perception were present to the novelist, even though the novelist, she or he, wouldn't necessarily deal with all forms at once. Bakhtin, the literary and critic, addressed this in a similar way because he noticed that some writers were able to create characters and situations that surprise. For him, that was to be found particularly in Dostoevsky. The reason for my excursion into this is that when we consider our role as researchers, we know that there are hidden aspects. We know that we only see one perspective at a time. We know we have taken a research question and a research problem, which is specific, which has cut out other possible lines of inquiry. If you're writing a dissertation or a thesis, you know that you are setting out various lines of inquiry, but in the end, you have to make a choice. What is the line that, and what is the question that you're going to take, and how are you going to answer it? For Husserl, phenomenology is aware that all those lines of inquiry are present. Its purpose is to describe and to bring out some of what may not be immediately apparent. We'll come back to this in the final part of the lecture when I look at the methods that are used, and particularly interpretive phenomenology, which aims to explore some of those hidden aspects.